What's up, guys? Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha here from RotoWire. In this video, we're going to reveal some of our favorite sleepers for fantasy basketball this season. We'll talk through some early round, mid round, and late round players to target in your drafts. Let's get right to it, Alex. Give me your first early round sleeper.
First early round sleeper, LaMelo Ball, starting point guard for the Charlotte Hornets. On Yahoo right now, his ADP is around 27. I get why it is there due to the injuries he's had the past few seasons. He has really had a hard time staying healthy. I'm a little more hesitant to give him the injury-prone label just because he's so young, and I think he was held out longer than he had to be because the team was so bad and they were looking for a better draft pick. But there are not many guys in this range, in this 20 to 30 range, who have shown in the past that they have real first-round upside. So that's why, even though, again, this is pretty early in your draft, I'm still going to consider him a sleeper.
Yeah, I like that one. If you could stomach the risk on the injuries with LaMelo Ball, no question he has first-round potential. I'm going to go with another young guard in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to say Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons. Now, I did just say the Detroit Pistons, so there are some caveats here. The Pistons were a tire fire last season, but Cade Cunningham quietly took a big step forward statistically, added about 3 points per game, was up to 7.5 assists per game, almost 1 steal per game last season. Also jumped up from 41 to 45% shooting from the field. That helps him a ton in roto leagues. He improved as a three-point shooter, knocked down almost 36% of his attempts from beyond the arc last season. Could see even more volume as he gets deeper into his career. Perhaps most importantly, though, Alex, Cade Cunningham played 62 games. Not ideal. It's still 20 absences, but a lot of those came at the very end of the season when Detroit had pulled the plug. And keep in mind, he missed almost the entire 2022-23 season. So even 62 games is a big step up for Cade Cunningham. I think he comes back an even better player, could finally have a healthy, normal offseason as he heads into year 4. He's going about pick 40 right now in a lot of drafts. I think he has closer to top 30, even top 25 upside if things break right. Last season, Cunningham was a top 45 player in per game value.
Yeah, Cade, I think at this point, look, I think Cade's a really talented player, and I think he's been, to some extent, held back by how bad the team has been around him. But I think the team only projects to be better this year. How good exactly? I don't know. But to be honest, I actually think that Tobias Harris signing helps Cade Cunningham, and that it just takes some pressure off of him. It gives him a legitimate scoring option to pass to even. So I think this is I think you're right in identifying Cade as a sleeper.
Before we get to our next sleeper, by the way, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like. Please make sure you're subscribed to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball YouTube channel. We're going to be bringing you a ton of content leading up to opening night and throughout the entire season. You'll also be able to find video versions of all of our podcasts on the YouTube channel. So please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. All right, Alex, mid-round sleepers. Where are we going here?
Jalen Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder is a forward on some sites, a guard on others. He's a wing. Coming off of a season which he was in the voting for most improved player. I like him this season as most improved player potentially. But he's being drafted around 41 on Yahoo. And that's not necessarily a bad draft slot for him, but I do think he has upside to finish as like the 25th best fantasy player. Now that Josh Giddey is in Chicago. Giddey was a fairly high usage player, and they replaced him essentially with Alex Caruso, who doesn't touch the ball that much necessarily. So I think Jalen Williams is going to be in a higher usage situation, and he's fairly young still. He can get better as the number 2 option on the Thunder.
I'm going to go with Brandon Miller of the Charlotte Hornets. We're talking about a guy who's going around pick 70 right now in Yahoo leagues. He's closer to the mid to late 80s in ESPN leagues. Got off to somewhat of a slow start as a rookie, but was really, really good over the second half of the season. Over his final 40 games last year, Miller put up 20 points, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.8 steals plus blocks per game on 46, 37, 84 shooting splits. You don't see that kind of efficiency right away from a lot of score-first rookies. Obviously, the return of a guy you mentioned, LaMelo Ball, that might take the ball out of Brandon Miller's hands, but I think there's a case to be made that LaMelo opens things up for Brandon Miller, helps create some more easy looks, takes some of that pressure off of Brandon Miller. Obviously, you got Miles Bridges there as well. So we'll see where he fits in that pecking order. But for as well as he finished last season, I'm surprised Brandon Miller is going off the board after guys like Tobias Harris and Zach LaVine, who presents a ton of risks. He's only going about 6 spots ahead of Keegan Murray right now in ESPN leagues, that just does not add up to me at all. I think there's a ton of upside in year 2 for Brandon Miller. I think we could see a big leap out of him.
Yeah, comparing him to Keegan Murray is good, I think, because Keegan Murray at best is the 4th option in Sacramento's offense. And Brandon Miller might be the number 2 option on Charlotte. He has to compete with Miles Bridges to some extent, but obviously Miller has more upside with the franchise. Darius Garland, who I am surprised he's being drafted 62nd on Yahoo right now, ADP, and actually later on sites like Underdog, ESPN. I know he struggled last year, but just so much of that was due to injury. Had a pretty, I mean, he broke his nose basically, and then he had to play, with worrying about being hit in the face, and he just had a tough end to last season, where he is someone who in the past has proven, I think his best 8 cat per game finish is 39th. And Donovan Mitchell being there, him and Mitchell kind of split offensive responsibilities, but you're picking at 62. You're taking someone with an extremely high floor, as I guess you would say, code number 1 or very high level number 2 option, who's got upside at any given night for 20 points, 10 assists is definitely within his range every night he plays.
Yeah, I like that one quite a bit. I'm going to stick with my theme of good players on bad teams here and go with Devin Vassell of the San Antonio Spurs. Took a big step forward in terms of efficiency last season. The counting stats maybe weren't as big of a leap as we were hoping for, but he shot 47% from the field last year. By far the best number of his career. Keep in mind that the Spurs were basically playing without a point guard for half of the season, so I think everything was more difficult for Devin Vassell and even Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, the Spurs are going to run even more through Wembanyama this season, but Vassell is pretty easily, to me, their second best option. I don't really think it's all that close. I think he has a good chance to be a 20 to 23 point per game guy this season. He gives you high volume threes. He averaged over 4 assists per game in 2023-24. Plus, he's a over 1 steal per game guy as well. Over his final 35 appearances, Vassell averaged 21, 5, and 4 on 49, 39, 79 shooting. He was playing close to 36 minutes per game in that span. The Spurs did go out and add Chris Paul. They brought in Stephon Castle in the draft, but honestly, neither of those are impactful enough pieces short term that it really scares me away from Devin Vassell. And of course, the same goes for Harrison Barnes as well. A decent veteran, but not somebody who's going to really steal usage from Vassell. You're basically getting Vassell at where he finished last season as the 70th ranked player in Roto League. So going into year 5 for him, I think he has top 50, top 55 potential.
Still really young, 24 years old. Clearly the number 2 option on the Spurs, and someone, I mean, maybe the only option in their starting lineup who's going to average more than 15 points per game. I mean, they're sort of projected to start Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, Wembanyama, and Devin Vassell. And he's just a really strong all-around player with a super high floor and someone who still has room to grow.
Let's get to some late round sleepers, Alex. I'll let you lead this one off. Where are we going first?
I'm going to go with Jonathan Kuminga, who is being drafted around pick 100 on Yahoo, and who I am comfortable picking closer to 70, because I think Kuminga projects as the number 2 scoring option on the Golden State Warriors behind Steph Curry. I don't really know who else would step in unless you believe in an Andrew Wiggins renaissance, and I guess he would maybe qualify as a sleeper because he's being drafted super late too. But I mean, if the part of the reason Steph Curry is being pushed down draft boards is because he's an injury risk, obviously, at his age, and so is Draymond Green. And so if you're of the belief that, hey, Steph Curry has a high chance of playing fewer than 65 games, as does Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, there's going to be a lot of nights where he is the clear number 1 option on this team, someone who's going to have to try to score 25 or 30 points a game in those nights. And I think he's going to have to try to score 20 to 25 even when Curry's healthy anyway.
I like it, man. So I've talked about a Spur, a Hornet, and a Piston so far. We need to complete the loop here and go to the Washington Wizards. I can't believe I'm saying this, man, but I think Jordan Poole is a sleeper for me this season. And there is some risk involved here because it's the Wizards and because it's Jordan Poole. But I think we fail to realize, because of the Shaq to the Fool moments and just the way that season started for Jordan Poole in Washington, that he was a lot more useful in fantasy than he was in real life. He did not have this catastrophically bad fantasy season. Now, if you drafted him with the 38th overall pick, no, you didn't get your return on value. But over his final 25 games, Jordan Poole averaged 21 points, 6 assists, almost 4 rebounds, 1.1 steals, shot 44% from the field, and nearly 37% from 3 on 9 attempts per game. He's never going to be a great field goal percentage guy because of that high volume from beyond the arc, but that's part of the reason that we like him. He might hit 3.5 threes per game. And he's also a very, very good free throw shooter. Always somebody who's been around 90%. Perhaps most importantly, he's only missed 10 games over the last 3 seasons. Everybody misses games. Feels like every star player misses 10 plus every year. Jordan Poole does not miss games. I'm not saying he's ever going to deliver on the promise that we thought he might when he arrived in Washington, but again, he got off to essentially a worst case scenario start last season. I feel like everybody just kind of tossed him aside, and he was able to salvage a pretty solid fantasy campaign. Top 75 player in terms of total value in Roto leagues last season. Nobody wants to draft Jordan Poole. I get it, but here's the good news, Alex. You don't have to draft him in the 40s or the 50s even like you did last season. He's widely available in the 90s or even later in a lot of drafts.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. It's like, for all the reasons you listed about Jordan Poole, I'm really conflicted about him this year. It's like, yeah, he had a strong end of the season and he has all this upside, but he was so bad early. But the risk, I mean, we talk about risk assessment all the time, obviously. I think your risk after pick 70 in fantasy is really when things just start, you can start shooting for upside. And so being able to get someone like Jordan Poole, who in theory is his team's #1 option, and has shown that potential in the past, getting him at pick 95, pick 100, you really do not have much to lose. And if it doesn't work out for you, you just drop him and you pick up someone off the waiver wire.
All right, let's do one more late round sleeper apiece, Alex. Who is your final sleeper?
I keep going back to this name, Khris Middleton, who is being drafted outside the top 100 right now in Yahoo. Obviously, he's going to start for the Milwaukee Bucks. Someone who a ton of injury problems the last few years. If you've drafted Middleton, you've gotten burned. That's just how it's been. And I understand why people are probably fed up with him. Like, if you're a consistent fantasy player over the past 3 years, you probably have had Middleton in one league, and now you're thinking not anymore. But like we just talked about with Jordan Poole, the risk is gone at pick 100 for someone who, very conservatively, we should expect to average like 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. And that's expect. Like, he 100% should average that, and he has upside for more. He's a 20.5 rebound, 5 assist player when he's healthy and playing 35 minutes a game. So I'm willing to draft him earlier than pick 100 as someone where if you can get 65 games out of him and he puts up solid starting numbers, he's going to be one of the best return on investments you could get.
I'm going to go with Tyus Jones, Alex, of the Phoenix Suns. And I thought about going Keontae George here. You made a nice case for him in our last video. So if you want to hear more about Keontae George, I implore you to go check that out. You could, of course, find it right here on our YouTube channel. When it comes to Tyus Jones, yes, he's back to being a backup in Phoenix, but I think this was a pretty solid landing spot for him, and frankly, a hell of a pickup for the Suns, who essentially get him at the veterans minimum. Jones has long been one of the best backup point guards in the NBA, and while that will be his role in Phoenix, we need to consider who he is backing up. Devin Booker has missed at least 14 games in each of the last 4 seasons, and he's missed a lot more than 14 in a couple of those. Bradley Beal missed 29 games last season. He missed 32 the year before. He missed 42 the year before that. I mean, this is an ideal landing spot. If you're Tyus Jones, you're thinking, yeah, I'm the backup point guard, but probably going to end up starting for a third of the season because Bradley Beal and Devin Booker are going to be out. Bottom line is he's going to find himself playing big minutes much more than we might think. And keep in mind, 2 seasons ago, he only needed 24 minutes per game to finish as a top 100 guy in Roto leagues as a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. So there might not be massive upside here. I'm not saying Tyus Jones has like top 50 potential, but if he's still on the board after pick 110, after pick 115, I think he's a really, really strong value.
Well, you mentioned it with Phoenix's rotation. They just don't have a great bench. Beyond that starting 5, like Monte Morris is back there technically, but that Damian Lee, Royce O'Neal, Mason Plumlee, like these guys are just not that reliable. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of nights where I think even if everyone stays healthy and Tyus Jones is a backup, he still could see 29 minutes per game. It's possible.